Hello, everyone. My name is Bruno Dennis, and today I will speak about generative AI models for medical data science. I used to work at Microsoft myself and also at IQVIA, which is a clinical research organization. So today I will give you some introduction on how generative AI could be applied for medical science. Where do we stand today? What are the positive things about generative AI? What are also the challenging elements and opportunities related to this new revolution? So we will cover first, we will rehearse on what is generative AI and a large language model. Why do I believe that GenAI and large language models are important for clinical research? What are the challenges that we have in applying generative AI for clinical research? And what are the opportunities? First, let me have a look at what is generative AI. As you most probably know, generative AI is part of artificial intelligence. It's a subset of the artificial intelligence field. So it's a form of machine learning, while machine learning is an advanced aspect of the field of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, you can see it as, okay, you define a set of rules, and the data will use this set of rules that you define to give an output. Machine learning itself will learn how to act from data that you ingest. So it will create the ability to learn from the data itself. But you will still have to trigger this machine learning elements. Generative AI is different in the sense that it's a type of machine learning which allows you to generate new data based on prompting capability. So using natural language or prompting direct questions into the model that will output to you the best answer to your initial prompt. So GenAI is there, and it's absolutely modifying the landscape as it is becoming far easier to query a very large set of information using natural language or doing the same with any type of object. So it can be applied to image, it can be applied to text, it can be applied to audio, it will also be applied to video. So it's really transforming each of these objects through image transformer, NLP transformer, audio or video transformer into vectors. And those vectors comprised thousands and millions of parameters, and those parameters will be used by the large language model to make links among each other. When you will query it, this will allow you to output the best statistical output based on the query that you do. And so I want really to reinforce the importance of vectors of tokens, which are embeddings, and I'll get to that in a minute. So how does large language model work? So there is 5 key building blocks. I call it myself PAT, like pawn in French, which are 5 different blocks in large language model. So we'll speak about embeddings, transfer learning, attention, pre-training, and tokenization. What is tokenization? Tokenization is effectively a way to use an input and transform it in different sub-elements. Each of those sub-elements will then be connected to each other. So we'll have embeddings, and there will be vectors that will be created between those individual elements. So if you take a sentence, for instance, this tool allows you to visualize the token of a text prompt. So on the left-hand side of your screen, there is 72 tokens there. So the tokenization element is very important in any large language model. The same applies for image tokens as well. So we have inputs, and you have different kind of encoders and decoders to find out those, to divide this image in different pixels or different image tokens. The same is true for video, which also come with text iterative tokenization. And the same applies to speech. So in each large language model, the same kind of transformation will happen. And that's why it's called large language models and transformer models. So token, very important elements in when we speak about large language model. The same is true for embeddings. Embeddings is the relationship between those different tokens. So here I take different words. I have man, woman, king, queen, and you have different parameters that are applied to those tokens. First, you have live being, as I can show you here. So you have live being, you have feline. Is it a feline or not? Is it human or not? Is it gender? Is it royalty? Is it a verb? Is it plural? So here the system will allow you to mark and give a value to each of those specific parameters. Man, okay, living being, most probably. So you get a probability of 0.6. Feline, no, a man is not precisely a feline, so no. Human, yes. Man, probably a human. Gender, yes. This is man, woman. So royalty, no, not really. Verb, no, it's not a verb. Plural, it's not a plural neither. And you do the same for each of those tokens, okay? And then based on this, you can really start creating the visualization of word embedding. So the relationship between those elements. You can see that man and woman are correlated to each other, king and queen as well. So that's how you create those embeddings. Hope this is clear for you. Then you have a concept which is called transfer learning, when you go from traditional machine learning, which are isolated single task learning, and then you have transfer learning. So the system will learn new tasks based on the previous learned task. So it's not in isolation. There is a knowledge transfer which is being done in the system itself. And that's also a very important element of how large language models are working versus traditional machine learning. The fourth element is attention. There is a concept of self-attention that provides a context-aware representation of each of the elements of the sequence. So you have scale-dot product attention, and you have multi-head attention, which allows you to refine in allowing the model to learn different aspects of the relationship between the different elements, which leads to a more robust understanding of the sequence. So here we go into a more detailed view of how LLM works. This attention model is a very important element as well of language LLM models. And then pre-training. Of course, large language model like ChatGPT 4.0, Llama, Mistral, or others are based on the fact that they've been pre-trained on massive universe of data that we call corpus. So you have here an example of the commonly used corpus or corpora information that you have in LLMs. They are being expanded. So you see that some of them are more Anglo-Saxon based. If you see at Mistral, which is done in France, it will also encompass a lot of non-English speaking elements. So this is very important because this pre-training will determine also the way that the LLM will work. So the idea is to pre-train these models with massive amount of data which are as diverse as possible. to be able to lower the risk of bias and lower and extending the data richness which goes beyond it. So pre-training is a very important element. That's how LLMs are still being done today. They are pre-trained on corpus of data. In the future, you will have a permanent training of those data that will be run on a frequent basis. To pre-train this LLM, you need massive amount of compute and storage, which is important. So it takes a lot of energy to do it. The idea is to use more and more advanced, hyperscaler model to do it faster than it used to be. Okay, so now let's run into uh, why is GenAI potentially revolutionizing the way that a medical professional will work in the future? How will it work? How will a clinical research associate work in the future? What will be the relationship that he will have between him and his patients? What will be the role of the patients? What will be also the role of generative AI in real clinical research? When you do clinical research on a new compound, on a new medicine, uh, how will European Medicine Agency and FDA approve the use of GenAI in the studies that you will propose them? So those are very key questions that will have a very large impact in the future. So how do we translate LLMs and generative AI into the field of medical science and clinical research? Then the idea is to do what we call a multimodal self-supervised training, where we will start to embed a lot of different data type, images, electronic health records, signals on the left-hand side, genomics information, graph, audio, texts, literature like you have in PubMed, or literature coming from universities, publications, clinical notes, knowledge graph. So it's really this global model of AI that is being created. Um, Through that, you have a knowledge graph which is being built based on the relationship of all the elements on the left-hand side. And it's what we call knowledge graph in the middle. And then you have the prompting and querying. So the medical professional or the researcher will be able to interrogate those database in natural language, in his own language, and will be able to also extract those response into different forms. Could be speech, could be video, it could be audio. Uh, so we'll be able, for instance, to summarize notes that he has taken, or really the um, the interaction with the individuals, the patient coming in his office, and be able to summarize that for him, or summarize that for the patient himself. So the boundaries are just not there anymore. I mean, it's limitless how we could be creative in the way that those data sets could be used. You could create chatbots, interactive note speaking, augmented procedures, grounded radiology reports. It can be used in the field of genomics data science to really look at specific uh, parts of gene sequence and look into how it's whether it will, for instance, influence the expression of a protein, for instance. Can be used also in hospital settings for bedside support to query large databases. So a lot of potential indeed. And so who are active now on those specific clinical models? So you've seen that MedPalm, for instance, created large language model from Google Research designed to the medical domain. Wolters Kluwer's as well, which is a more private LLM. You have BioMistral from the French University, and you have obviously GPT-4 and Meta and Llama 3, which are what I called universal large language models from Meta, OpenAI, Microsoft, which are extremely well known already, and that have already a massive impact on the way that querying and generative AI is being done. Why why should clinical research people and medical professionals start using it, and why do they want to use it? But the first element is speed. Speed is at the essence. If you do an analysis of a patient and you want to understand as fast as possible what the patient is potentially suffering from, then it's ideal to have the speed which larger language model are built on. So then there is no code, only prompting. So you don't need to code anything. So you use your own natural language to query the overall model, which is extremely fast and easy for everyone. So it's universal. It can cover 360% of the clinical research process if the data is available, of course, in the large language model. So it can go from preclinical studies, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So you can analyze a massive set of data thanks to the fact that everything which is clinicalresearch.gov and a lot of massive database of clinical research are already being exploited within the large language model. So you have National Library of Medicine, EMANE, PubMed, Nature, Udracity, CTR, NICE, FDA, EMA, Databank, which are already being used by those LLM systems. So it's very, yeah, it's changing the way that things will be done in the now and for the future. So what are the key use cases that you can use for generative AI for clinical medical research? First is accelerated drug discovery. So by applying prompting into your process of clinical research or preclinical research, you can definitely accelerate the way that you have an understanding about a specific disease area and have a clear effect on the speed related to that. Then you have efficient clinical trials. So the clinical trials as well. So you can do quality control on the input that you will give to European Medicine Agency or FDA or to your local regulators. Same thing, yeah. The point third is complement to point 2. So really easing the understanding of the diverse regulatory approvals that you have. Then you have personalized treatments, and I'll get into that in a minute. So it can be used to better understand what are the personalized treatment that you need to give to a specific individual. And it will, of course, enhance the productivity of all people in the domain, being medical professionals, so primary care, secondary care, patients, association, you name it. So everyone will be impacted. So you might say, okay, but that's all good, but this natural, this LLM are yeah, they are not too far to what a medical professional could do of a university professor in a medical school, and that's where the paradigm changed immensely. So now at start of 2024, Hummingbird, which create a kind of benchmark between the different medical schools. So they applied the different medical school questionnaire that medical students have to go through. And if you see, there is different models. So the MEDS MCQA, MMLU in anatomy, you have MMLU clinical knowledge, you have MMLU in college biology. So you have different kind of really exams that are passed through these LLMs now, and they are assessing whether they are doing better, or how much grade would they get if all the question would be answered uh, by those LLMs. You can see on the left-hand side the best one. So you can see that GPT-4 and MedPound-2 are the ones that are the most, that are the most precise in answering questions. You see that anatomy is fairly high, clinical knowledge as well, biology elements even higher. Genetics is also starting to be top notch in the answer which is being given. So the quality is starting to be there. It's not 100%, huh? So there is always a risk for hallucination or bias, but it's doing a fairly good job in providing the right answer. So the human parity is there already. So it's better than the majority of medical professionals. So I started myself and I did a small test on a medical question related to a 24-year-old pregnant woman at 28 weeks of gestation, which has complained of fever and chills. And that's recently worked in her garden. And apparently she had a tick bite on her arm. So the risk, so we want to test her for Lyme disease, and we also want to give something to her uh, because she has rash and headaches. And we ask the system to say, okay, you have four choices. You need to choose between ibuprofen, tetracycline, amoxicillin, and gentamicin in this particular case. GPT 3.4 would give a wrong answer most of the time with tetracycline, which is not the best for a patient suspected of Lyme disease. Um, so amoxicillin is the safe thing, and the physician, the human, would be superior to GPT 3.5. No, when you ask exactly the same question using GPT-4 or Microsoft Beacon Copilot, you would have a far better answer. So the physician and the copilots would definitely go for amoxicillin. So I really made sure that the system would only give me one of those four options, and it's right. So if I ask the question on any other kind of disease area, even in some case for rare disease, it's giving me a fairly correct answer. So I did it for Marfan disease or for Fabry disease. I was amazed by the understanding already of the of GPT-4 in this case, or LLM in terms of the understanding of the disease area. I'm not an expert myself in those diseases, but if I speak to some people that understand Marfan disease well, they are quite also amazed by the capability of the system to give the right answer. No, there is traceability challenge. So there are challenges related to LLM, and it's important that everyone understands that before using them. There is a limited traceability. So in medical science, you want to ask a question A, you expect an answer B. You reiterate your question A, you want the same answer B. And you also want to be able to trace the source of the data, which are very important to be able to document the decision that you are taking. And here, it's not the case with LLMs. You have limited access to the metadata of those data source, one. And secondly, you could use the same prompt and you will always get different answers because the deep natural, so the LLM will always go through the same system. It will go through its graph um, to to give an output. So you'll have an input as a prompt, and the outputs will always be different. Now there is ways, and I've been speaking with Microsoft recently to try to limit this, the the delta between those outputs. But in fact, it's factored in. It's the way that LLMs are working today. So this is a challenge. For me, there is also a large challenge related to the adherence to FAIR principle. FAIR is findability. Um, so different ways to make sure that the data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. FDA and European Medicine Agency are really in favor of fair data principles, and I think they are totally right to do so. It's a challenge because if you look at OpenAI, if you look at Llama and Mistral, they are not built to be totally fair in the sense that there is no ways to have a findability of each of the data source that you have in the answers that is being given. You have sometimes difficulty to get access to the right information that you want. So you don't know where the data is coming from. Is it, for instance, for medical research? Is it from which continent is it coming? Are those data generated mainly on specific parts of the world? So you have difficulty to quantify and assess those. Interoperability, the GenAI models are not able to work across all the different formats and location. And then reusability, so synthetic data generated by GenAI cannot address the data scarcity and privacy concerns. So it's privacy concerns and data scarcity are still a very important elements. So for me, by analyzing those four elements on OpenAI, for me the metadata and algorithms are still hidden, not easily accessible. So it's not the findability is not there. On the accessibility side, also metadata algorithms are hidden. You don't have access to different data source. So it's partially true what you can get here if you look at fair data principle. From an interoperability standpoint, it's for me untrue. So you cannot work still across different formats and locations. And the reusability and synthetic data generated by GenAI is not addressing per se the data scarcity and privacy concerns. So for me, it's not fair yet. So we need to be careful when we use generative AI in a pure clinical research context. We need to be aware of those limitations. We need to be aware of hallucination. We need to remember one thing is that GenAI are trained to fill the semantic gap. They create synthetic data, even if they are inexact, because they want to fill the semantic gap in the answer. So you ask a question, A, are GenAI models trained to fill semantic gaps when answering a prompt? In this case, he was honest. He said, yes, GenAI models are designed to bridge semantic gaps when responding to prompts. So basically, they will always give you the feeling to give an answer which is complete, which makes a lot of sense from a cognitive standpoint for us humans, but that might contain information that are not true because the system will always try to give the best probabilistic way for you to understand the answer. So there will not be perfect answer, and especially when dealing with highly specialized and novel topics. So that's important to pay attention to that. Be always critical and beware of hallucinations. But the pressure is so high now because why do everyone look at GenAI also in clinical research and medical data science? It's first because you have an increased possibility of success um, thanks to AI when you do when you use artificial intelligence and generative AI in clinical research domain. So it has been, different source, McKinsey, Lancet, Persistent, EY. I took a kind of summary of what I read there. The increased possibility of success is 10% on average on clinical research in terms of success rate of a clinical trial. You have cost and duration reduction that can be estimated on 20% on average, and accelerate time to approval of 1 to 2 years, which represents, billions at a global scale in terms of amelioration of the costs of all those clinical trials. So basically, by this, and I'm ending my presentation here, I just want to say we are into it now. GenAI is there; it will stay. For sure. A lot of people have put a lot of efforts into it. People will get used to it. People will start using it because it's easily accessible. But we need to be very cautious when using it in a medical context. So it still need to be checked by a medical professional. You need to be aware of hallucinations and bias of the system. But test it, do it for yourself, check it out, give your ideas on what you believe into it. And if you want to be in contact with me, do not hesitate. Happy to discuss with you on this very, very interesting topic of generative AI applied to medical science. Thank you.